to approach the Quran, able to enter into that state of the presence of the Quran before we even begin to open the Quran, so to speak. How do we approach our salat? So I wanted to open it up before we begin any other discussion. Especially I'm thinking of you, Susan, and Sarah. Anjum is an old hat at this, so I'm not going to, engage with him that because I know he knows how to do this already. But I want to find out, is there anything in what we've been talking about in the last few meetings that you feel you want unpacked more for yourself? Some aspects of presence and how to achieve that presence and what, so I wanted to open it up if anybody had anything that they wanted to bring out. So Susan, is there anything that you feel you want to underscore, to be heard, unpacked a bit more for you?
Center on the process and be quiet in my mind. I don't know if that's the kind of feedback you're looking for.
That's perfect. Everybody experiences that, so I think we can talk about that. That's a real issue that everybody experiences. So, Sarah, that's something I think you experience also?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and I'm sure Anjum, I know Anjum does, and I know that other little fellow there that I'm pointing at myself does as well. So here it is. You will definitely always experience the narrative, the noise of the self. This is something which is universal. It's out of habit. We're always, from the time that we grow up, or as a child, where our parents are saying, "Oh, talking to us and how wonderful you are, and in tickling you and doing all," and basically you're in this narrative of this individual self and the conditions that you were being raised in are all building there this edifice of what the narrative of who you are, your biographical self, and that biographical self is a companion to. It becomes like a companion, a overlay over the basic structure of the nafs, the self, which is archetypical aspects of ourselves, which all human beings have. But this is your particular sort of clothing on it. And then behind that, and actually orchestrating all of that, and illuminating all of that, and animating all of that, is your ruh. Now, your ruh has been there from before you were born. It remains with you now as you are in the moment, and it will remain with you when you transition from this world into the next. So you have, and this is important to grasp this intellectually, and also, as we have been talking about, experience it in our own being as well, and get a taste of it, which is, we have this constant self, which is the ruh, which is a spark of the eternal light of Bil Amri Rabbi, of God's light, of the Nur Azal, the light of lights. Then we have the structure, which is which we've talked about before. It has the second structure has two elements. One is tabi'ah, and the other is fitra. Tabi'ah is our nature, animal nature, that is to do with being hungry or getting anxious about something, the fight-flight syndrome, all the energies that drive us to survival as a human being. And on top of that, which layered on that, and how that manifests, how these two other things manifest rather, is how the conditions in which you were brought up in. So somebody's brought up in Iran and somebody's in America, and you have this conditioned self. You can't get away from this sort of trifecta of the human experience. Now, when you start realizing that, and conceiving the idea and experiencing that there's something in you which is beyond your animal self, which is beyond your relative conditioned self, and that it is beyond all the conditions that created your narrative, your biographical narrative. That is your link to that which is constant and forever within you. Now, meditation, dhikr in extension, all of that is a way to connect with that inner light within you. But here we go. How do you connect with that inner light if the tumultuousness of the self is constantly impinging? It's constantly coming out. So when you try to sit and be in stillness, everything immediately comes. It is actually it's the nature of it. I don't know how many times you get up, you do your wudu, you're in a good state, you think, I'm going to make my salat and I'm going to be without my mind and thought, and then you say Allahu Akbar. As soon as you say Allahu Akbar and you look down at your terba, you look down at your prayer rug or whatever it is, and then you think, now, did I leave my keys on the drawer, or she was talking to this rubbish about this other person today. It all comes because this is the nature of our condition, is that we want the nafs, the relative self, the animal self wants to serve and remain in charge. It wants to be the center of attention because it claims incarnation, it claims existence. So, and we've been used to it by habit of identifying ourselves with that. So it's very difficult to break that habit. Salat, meditation, remembering as best as you can, moment to moment, cutting through at moment to moment is the labor, is what we call jihad. This is the jihad al-nafs and tazkiyat al-nafs. Jihad al-nafs, as you know, is the struggle with the self. Is that you little by little recognize this patterning, and you more and more attempt to cut through, to see through, to discipline yourself, to do all the preparations for yourself to approach your prayer, to approach meditation. Even in yoga, look, if anybody does yoga, you know that the spiritual value of yoga is that when you reach a position in yoga, there's all this mental activity that comes in that wants to divert you from staying in that position. It's the same thing, is that as soon as you do something intentionally for to dive into the higher element, to the higher consciousness, lower consciousness continues to distract. There's also one other thing, and all this is needed to understand. One has to have an intellectual grasp of these elements, because it's not chaos. There is a cosmological pattern, a universal pattern that every human being experiences. And once you grasp it, then you know all the moving parts, you have more of a potential than for understanding, for making efforts. You have more enthusiasm because you know that you're not just this thing, this conditioned self, this animal self. You are something which is connected to the universal higher consciousness, to God, to your transcendent and authentic true self that is at the core of your being. You know that. So this is a very important step in having this clear understanding. I want to bring in one other thing here, which is shaitan. Now, shaitan is a active element in all phases of this this cosmology of self. Shaitan is described by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as that the shaitan is within the blood. It means that that element of distraction, that element of waywardness, of misdirection, is within us, and it's a constant play. It has in itself no power. It's an energy that has no power. That's why when it's described in the Quran, it's waswisu fi sudur il-nas. It whispers in the breasts of mankind, because that's all it can do. It can only whisper. And how it affects human beings, you and I, is that when you give it ear and attention, and it connects with your hawa, your desire, your inclination, and then you take that suggestion and you go with it, you follow it. So to get back to your question, Susan, to bring it to a focus, it's a matter of practice and will. You just have to do it. You sit there, and over time, it's like the way I personally experienced it when I was once given a dhikr to do by a sheikh that Anjum knows very well, Sheikh Ikram. And it was a very powerful dhikr in that it was I had to do it a long time over a period of many months. And it was daunting when I first began it, but I began it. Now, at first, when I was doing it, I just couldn't do but a few minutes. And then it would, yada, 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 yada in the narrative. But then I found the next time I sat down to do it, I was a few feet on that runway, right? Further ahead. Because I knew what was going to come. As soon as I sat down, I'll start hearing this pattern. But there was a delay. There was a delay. I was a little bit ahead of it. The next time I did, I was a little bit further ahead of it. So over time, I started learning the territory of myself, and was easier for me to cut through it and dismiss it. Before, I was, way back in its beginning, I was being reactive to it. But as I moved forward in it, I found myself beginning at a spot further on the trail as opposed to the head of the trail. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what it is, and that's the struggle of the self, and that is the jihad al-nafs, that you have to be persistent and consistent. That's why also the awliya Allah, the Urafa, always said that a little bit of dhikr, consistent, is better than a lot of dhikr once in a while. Because if you do enough that you could do over a consistent period of time, there is a build-up effect. If you do it once in a while, it becomes cathartic. So you just have an experience, and you go, okay, this is wonderful. I feel elated. I'm out of my mind, and then the next hour the cat spills the milk on your computer, and it's all over, right? So the idea there is, if you have a little bit on a regular, consistent basis, you've gardened the terrace further and more completely than just a few plants, larger plants here and there. So that's what it takes. And so you're dealing with these different elements. I also want to just say one more thing about shaitan, because it's a very, people who grew up as Muslims have this idea of shaitan, of this little kind of red devil creature with a pitchfork, and or calling other people shaitan or whatever, or Shaitan, let's be very clear. Shaitan has no power and no strength. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power or strength other than the strength of the one, of Allah Azza wa Jal. The shaitan is an energetic, an energy pattern in the human psyche, and it may have also other cosmological it applies in other places, but I don't know. I can only know from my own experience that it suggests and it acts as a possible diverting force. And I think we covered this once before. In Arabic, the two words that represent shaitan, one is shaitan, which is from the Arabic root shatana, which means at its core, it means to despair. So we know that even the name of shaitan is taken from an action of desperation, of being despairing of what? Despairing of Allah's mercy. And that's not true. It's a lie, because Allah says in the Quran, "Kataba ala nafsi rahma." I've written upon myself over everything mercy. So shaitan that's a lie. It's that action of desperation is predicated on a lie, or in some cases where people feel desperate and they feel there's no way out, they just don't know because they're so identified with shaitan. And that happens a lot. People say, "Oh, I'll never be in love again," or something, or I'll never, have the money I had once before. Oh, how I lived. I mean, I hear this all the time. I'm just listening to all this. It's just, they have no idea. What are they talking about? Nobody, a person could have something one day, and then the next day the whole world changes. It's our identification in our minds. And there are people who become very ill with this desperation issue. But there's always a way out. As long as because there's always the opposite of shaitan is Rahman. It's not Allah, it's Rahman. And then the other name for shaitan is Iblis, which comes from the Arabic word ablasa, which means, ablasa means to make something appear distant. Right? So Allah's not with you. Allah, you're far away from Allah. This is a lie. There's no such thing. Allah is closer to you, Allah says in the Quran, closer than your jugular vein. In Surah Al-Najm, Allah says, Kaba wa qathaini, that we drew him, the Prophet ﷺ, we drew him 2 bow's lengths near to us, where Allah is speaking. And then we revealed to his heart what we revealed, and the heart did not lie by what it saw. So the intimacy that human beings have in our essence, in our hearts, the potential for the closeness to Allah is real. It's truth. It's haqiqah. So shaitan and Iblis, desperation and appearing distance, all these things are in the psyche that this energy called shaitan we seek refuge from that, because we know that is a diversion and a lie for who we are. The other thing is, Susan, is that we have to make time as much as we can. We're living in such an era that it's so difficult for most people just to take the time, 5 minutes, to close the door, turn the phone off. We're addicted to everything other than Allah. Most of us, I'm not saying, of course, maybe we're a little bit better, I don't know. But that for us, we have to become more and more addicted to what is the eventual meeting that we're going to have. We're all, no matter who we are, no matter what we're doing in life, there'll be the time where you will meet Allah. That is true. That is haq. You will meet your maker, so to speak. So do you want to meet in utter disgrace and terror? Or do you want to meet an old friend who you are delighted to be with when the moment comes? And that's a very important metaphor to keep in mind, because we will, all of us, every human being will return that nur within us will to Allah. All of us came from that original source, and we will return to that origin. So we want to return with a good spirit, submitted and content to leave this world. So it becomes important. But most of us, most people, we spend most of our time in, Bukhara tomorrow, or, next week I'm going on a retreat, or, 2 weeks from now I'm going to meet this person, and I know, well, it's wahm, it's illusion. Okay, so is there anything else, Susan, that you wanted to, does that help?
It helps tremendously, and particularly understanding at least a little bit or in a different way the nature of Shaitan and Iblis and that role that they play in keeping me stuck in a place that is not closer to Allah. So I really appreciate that explanation. One of the things that I have found confusing in walking the path is that there seems to be so many different, techniques or rules or sets of rules. So is it that I have to understand all the nuances of all the nafs and unknit every veil to be able to see clearly? Does that make sense to you?
I understand your question.
Okay.
So you don't have to know any of these things.
Oh, thank God.
No, here's the thing. Here's the thing. And this is a wonderful, wonderful realization. When you really get this, it's such a relief. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, that being of light and the archetype human being, the perfected human being. He said, of knowledge we've given little. And he said his prayer is always, give me the knowledge that I need at the time that I need it and no more. So he's indicating here that each one of us is in perfect position. I guess it's the word I'm looking for another word, but you are at the threshold. Each one of us right now is at the threshold. Receive whatever it is that Allah is bringing us up through His rububiyah, His lordship, is very, very specific to every individual at any moment, at any given time. So all you have to know is what you need to know right now, at this moment. Islam has been plagued, Islam meaning the historical teachings of Islam, has been plagued with this idea. You have to have a big library of books behind you. I have a little library of books behind me. A whole huge library of books behind you. Academic studies, intense Arabic and philosophy and history, and that the idea that people have that to know your deen, it is so almost impossible because it's so huge, the practice of the deen. This is part of the action of shaitan. Anjum, you're lifting a finger in shock.
Yeah, I wanna comment on that. I spent most of my life collecting books and reading them. And I collected hundreds of books. And in 2014, what you just said, that Allah's mercy is so strong that He will give you the knowledge of what you need to know at the time you need to know. When that realization came to me in 2014, I also realized that all those books had become a burden on me.
Ya Allah.
So I started to get rid of them. Initially, I gave them to some of them to a local mosque. I inquired people here if they wanted. Not many people wanted those books. Then I took a full suitcase of books to in 2015 overseas and gave them to a cousin of mine. Then a lot of them went into a cycling bin because I couldn't find anybody to take them. And I got rid of about 80% of those books that I had collected since I was little. And it was such a relief that I couldn't believe it, because what happened to me was that I started to associate quote unquote knowledge, real knowledge, with those books. And that association became a burden rather than a source of relief for me. So that's it. I said, you know what? That's it. I'm done.
Ya Allah. So that's it. And, you know, everyone is within the knowledge of Allah. Allah knows, is all-knowing and all-encompassing. So in His entire creation, everything that is happening is at an optimum level of evolution. So we can't, as individuals, take ourselves out of the ascent of Allah's and fulfillment of Allah's intention in the universe, which He says that I was a treasure wanting to be known. Kanzul Makhfiya. I was a treasure hidden, wanting to be known. So I manifested this creation to be known. If you grasp that means every single atom, every subatomic particle, every form that these atoms have taken and multiplied and complexified into what we see as the celestial and terrestrial spheres, as well as our own selves, is everything is optimized on the evolutionary ascension scale of ascension. So you, Susan, Anjum, Sarah, myself, everything and every human being is at that threshold. There's nothing more or less that they need other than they need to willfully awaken and be in the now, in the moment, in submission. Submitted what? The illusion of your separate self, the illusion that you're in charge, the illusion that you have agency. You have some agency, but majority of your agency is not within your hands. If you do your bit, that is the only bit that we are asked to do and that we are charged to do, then the cornucopia of Allah's overflowing guidance and upbringing and gifts of flow without any lack whatsoever. So that's the thing. That's the thing. You need to know what you need to know at the time that you need to know it. And it may be that it may take you to different things to look at. For instance, you may want to learn to sing the beautiful songs about Allah and His creation. Why? Because you may want to, you need that element in you to raise your consciousness. You may need to reach out to your brothers, your sisters, your friends, and so on, and do service to people, because it helps take you out of yourself. It leads you to submission. You need to sit down with the Quran more often, but nobody's telling you this is the way. You are just discovering it as it comes to you, as it's reflected to you in your everyday life. And if you're fortunate, you have friends of the path, people who are like-hearted, who want the same thing for themselves. There's an X factor that takes place. It's a barakah. Allah says that my rahmah is with my jama. His mercy is with his jama. There's a multiplying factor. We don't know how to quantify it, but it's there. When you have that with other people, like even this gathering of all of us together, I mean, why are we here together? We're not here because of diet or background or whatever. We're here all wanting and reflecting a certain ilk and in direction in our life. We know something and we all share that, and that helps us. Each one of us will benefit each other in a way we don't even know. So another wonderful thing about this issue is that you're totally, if you think about it, you're totally embraced. You're totally embraced by Allah's love, to be known, to be worshipped. Worship mean what? For you to come up to your highest consciousness. So it's beyond description. It's such a sweetness beyond the ability to describe. Once you really know that you actually in Allah's grip, you think you're something else, but you're not. The Imam Ali said that you think you're just this little thing, but the whole universe is within you. So there's a universal reality which is there with you, gripping you, embracing you, there for you. But how do we let go of the narrative of an identification with the self? And this is what this path is about. This is what being a Muslim is about. This is what Islam is about. And this is what the Sufi way is about. The Sufi way is strictly about dissolving and dissolution of the locus of consciousness, of claim of that you have it in you, beside the fact that the nur of Allah is with you. That it's the nur of Allah that is your true consciousness, not the conditioned consciousness, not the relative you, the one that's going to pass away, but that which is forever within you. That is your true self. And the Sufi way is for that realization and that submission to that, and that being embraced and embraced. Embracing and being embraced at the same time. That's what it is. Sarah, anything from you?
I'm listening. It's just great to listen.
It is. I think I'm going to do more of that too. Thank you.
I have a question whenever you're ready.
Bismillah.
Yeah, it's been asked of me by a few people that it's related to the whispering of shaitan. It's been asked of me by some people that how do we know that when a thought comes to our minds, if it's from shaitan or if it's from our ruh? So what would you have to say to that? What do you have to say to that?
The difference is always that when something comes to you, and I when you say something, I'm not I don't
Any thought, it could be any thought.
well, if it's a thought that contravenes anything to do with the edeb of the path of Allah, anything which is contrary to the wisdom teachings of the Quran, contrary to anything of the prophetic personality, anything which is contrary to your road to discovery, and anything like that, then it's from, if that is from shaitan, if it comes from anything outside of that. Like, think of this, when Musa was in front of Pharaoh and he was ordered, this order came, throw your staff down, right? And he became frightened because he didn't, where was this, coming from? But then he realized that it is an order coming from his Ruh, and there's nothing in it for him. So it's the next thing in the Quran. It says, and you threw, no, but we threw. Right? Ramaita, I can't remember the ayah right now. That it wasn't Musa that threw, but it was Allah through the hand of Musa. But there was a moment in pause in his reflection where he had to discern and to see the mightiness of that moment. Was it from himself? Was it from Allah? That's something that he had within him, a taste and an understanding. And that's what we have to develop, is a taste and an understanding. And that takes knowledge of ourselves. Man arafu nafsahu, faqad arafu rabbahu. He who knows himself knows his Lord. And that takes time to understand what are the different habits of the self. If you're an alcoholic and you get the thought that you'll just have one more drink, for sure that's from shaitan, not from the Rahman. So is it something which is going to lead you to improve yourself, your health, your worship, your wisdom? If it's in that category, it's from the Rahman. If it's outside of that, and then I'm not talking about ordinary daily things like brushing your teeth and all that, but it's essential elements in your life, then it's from the shaitan. And also, one other thing, when you do something that you're not sure if it's from the shaitan or the Rahman, you'll know instantly for the outcome. And you'll learn. You'll learn that if you do this one thing, look at the result. The result tells you what it is also. And so you know for next time. It's a multifaceted, can be a very multifaceted subtlety, and it's nuanced in so many ways to this question that you have. But you will be able to have it as a taste within you, and you know what it is. All right, alhamdulillah. We spent, what time is it? I'm looking over. It's 8:04. So we won't have our dhikr session today because I have to have another commitment at 8 o'clock 4 minutes ago. I'm sorry about the delay. Now I'll come on a little bit earlier when we do this again, inshallah. And if there's anything anybody wants specifically to touch on in these gatherings, please email me beforehand, and so we could bring it up. I would like to. My intention for these online gatherings is to really make available the transformative teachings of Islam. That our deen is a path of transformation. The the wisdom of the Quran and the teachings that we have and the teachings of dhikr and self and introspection and muraqabah, all these things are for our refinement and for our upbringing and for our realization. And we each have to take this very personally, and whatever we can do together to assist each other in that, in the ascension of higher consciousness, that's what we need to do. It's not for any other purpose than for that. So if something is, you're struggling with something or other, let's open it up and bring it out into what are the wisdom teachings of our deen, how it can enlighten it and give us the answers that we need so that we can continue on this delightful journey, inshallah. Let's say a Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين. All right, salam alaikum.